Exception handling. What is meant by exception handling? So this is one of the, we can say, exception handling. Exception is nothing but runtime error. It's going to handle the runtime errors. It is going to be handle the runtime errors. See, whenever we are getting an error, or whenever we are raising and we are getting an exception, immediately it is going to stop the program execution flow. It will interrupt the program execution flow. In which instruction it is going to be raise an exception. From the next instruction, it is not going to be execute. Just it will stop the execution flow over there, and it is going to be terminates the program execution flow. We want to do is, at least whenever we are raising an exception, we want to make the rest of the statements at least be executed. We want to make the rest of the statements to be executed. That is what exception handling. Exception handling uses to handle the runtime errors. Runtime errors. So three different types of errors we have: syntax error, runtime error, logical error. Syntax error, grammatical mistakes, which is going to be reported during compilation time. Grammatical mistakes in a sense, like each and every statement has to be terminated with a semicolon. If you miss the semicolon, then it is going to be reported as syntax error during compilation time. So this kind of errors. So for loop, or while loop, it should not end, that particular line is not ended with a semicolon. So if we give semicolon, it is going to be raise an error. These kind of things. So syntactically, there is no errors. Everything is perfect, and we are going to be execute the program as well. During execution of the program, during the execution of the program, um, based on the input what we have given to the program, it is going to be raised an exception sometimes. That is called, I mean, during the execution of the program, based on the input what we have given, it is going to be give some error. That error is called as runtime error or exception. Exception. There is no syntax error. There is no error during execution as well. We are getting the output, but that output is not our expected one, which is considered as logical error. Identifying the logical error is difficult. For that only we need to do the debugging. For that only we need to do the debugging process. So why it is difficult to identify the logical error? If it is a syntax error or if it is a runtime error, it is going to be display the error message. Based on that, what is the error we can able to identify and we can able to rectify it. But whereas coming to this logical error, we are getting the output, but the output is not our expected one. If we are not getting the expected output, in a sense, we need to think like there was some mistake. So where, in which logic we did the mistake? So we need to debug it and we need to rectify it. Exception. What is meant by exception? An exception is an event that interrupts the normal flow of program, and it is through the object at runtime. So how we can able to handle the exception? First, in which case we are going to be get the exception. I'll give the example. So just I'll be accepting two numbers and I'm dividing one number with other number. N1, N2 result. So first I'll be asking the user to enter two numbers. Enter two numbers for division. We're going to read one number with sc.nextInt and the same for N2 as well. Now here result we are going to be get N1 divided N2. If it is success, so then we are going to be get this result after division. Result after division. And I'll write one more statement for our understanding. This statement will not execute if exception arises. See, in this particular line, there is a chance of getting an exception. In this particular line, there is a chance of getting an exception. So we'll see that if it is raising an exception here, the remaining statements will not be executed. It is going to be interrupts the program execution flow with that particular statement, and it makes the control to come out from the particular block. So enter two numbers. So I have given one is 10 and the other one is 2. Result after division is 5 we are getting. This statement will not execute if exception rises. This statement will not execute if exception rises. See, in the same case, 10, 0, we are getting this exception in this particular statement. Here we are getting exception in this particular statement. When it is raising an exception in this particular statement, then it is going to be stop the execution flow. It is not going to be execute the remaining statements. These statements it is not going to be get executed. So what is this exception here? Arithmetic exception divide by 0. Arithmetic exception divide by 0. So this exception when it is going to be raised is when we are trying to divide a number with 0, we are going to be get this particular exception. When we are dividing a number with 0, then we are going to be get this exception. See, we have different types of exceptions. Different types of exceptions. Types of exception. Exception. Unchecked exception. See, what is meant by checked exception? What is meant by unchecked exception? See, the classes which is going to be directly inherit the throwable class except the runtime exception and error is considered as checked exceptions. The examples for this checked exception will be like input output exception, that is IO exception, SQL exception, all these things. So we'll give that. Except runtime exception. IO exception, input output exception. When this exception will rise, we'll see. SQL exception. When this will rise, we'll discuss. So coming to unchecked exception, this is going to be inherit the runtime exception, which is known as unchecked exception. Under unchecked exception only, we are going to be get this arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, and then array index out of bounds exception, all these things. So these exceptions are not going to be checked at the time of compilation, but they are checked only at runtime. And this exceptions is going to be checked during compile time. The exceptions are checked at compilation time as well. But it is going to be checked at runtime. Runtime exception, which is known as unchecked exception. Arithmetic exception, array index out of bounds exception. See, we have discussed an example when this arithmetic exception is going to be raised, and we have to see when this array index out of bounds exception is going to be raised. If we are declaring the array size as 5, if we are declaring the array size as 5, it is going to be store only 5 elements into the array. I mean, it will allow us to store only 5 elements into the array. More than that 5 elements, if we are trying to store any one element, so we are going to be get the exception called as array index out of bounds exception. So as we have the size 5, more than 5 size, if we are trying to store the element, then we are going to be get the error. Then we are going to be get the error, that is runtime error, that is array index out of bounds exception. See, in this example, what we have discussed, If exception rises in this particular statement, the remaining statements what we have in this particular program is not executing. The remaining instructions what we have in the program, it is not executing. We want to make those statements to be executed. We want to make those statements executed. So for that purpose, we are going to be handle the exception. We have to handle the exception. To handle the exception, we're going to be use these keywords: try, catch, finally, throw, throws. Try, catch, finally, throw, throws. So these five keywords, by using these five keywords, we can handle the exception. By using these five keywords, we can handle the exception. At least we can able to make the rest of the statements to be executed. Rest of the statements to be executed. Try block or try for what purpose we'll use. Suppose here we are thinking like in this particular statement, we are going to be get the exception. There is a possibility to get the exception. That kind of doubt, if we have about one or particular instructions, one or a few particular instructions, then we are going to be place that block in the try. We are going to be place that with the try block. Then immediately we are going to be write the catch block as well. Immediately we are going to be write the catch block as well. Whenever we are writing the try block, immediately we have to write the catch block. Because what is the purpose of using this catch block is the content what we have written within the try block. If it is raising an exception, then immediately the catch block is going to be executed. Otherwise, the catch block will not execute. See here, the code what we have placed in the try block is raising an exception. Then immediately the catch block is going to be get executed. Then immediately the cache block is going to be get executed. Otherwise, the cache block will ex Otherwise the cache block will not execute. For one try block, we can able to write any number of cache blocks. But how many statements, like whichever it may be, the exception rises, that related cache block is going to be executed first. This statement will execute always. If the case here the statement is going to be raise an exception, then this particular statement is not going to be executed. Then simply it will enters into this cache block. It is going to be print the content what we have in the cache block, and then it is going to be terminated. So it will comes out. At least we can able to make execution of this particular statement. At least we can able to make these statements to be executed. So 10, 2. There is no exception. Result after division, we are getting 5. Result after division, we are getting 5. And finally, this statement will execute always. Even that statement we are executing. And in this particular case, if you see, so 10 divided by 0, we are getting java.lang.arithmetic exception divide by 0. So that is the arithmetic exception. When we are dividing a number with 0, we are getting this exception. It is going to be raise this particular exception. So there is a actual error message or actual exception message what it has to be printed. So instead of that, here divide by 0 exception occurs. We are going to get this particular what I have written here in this dot written. We are going to get. I'm not printing the exception by the exception. If I'm giving be printed println, so then default error message what we have as per this predefined one, it is going to be get. But here in the system.out.println, I have given the content out here. Divide by 0 exception occurs. That error message we have given. See, if it is raising an exception with the code what we have written in the try block, then only the catch block is executing. Otherwise, the catch block is not executing. If the code what we have written in the try block is raising an exception, then only the try block is going to be, sorry, then only the catch block is going to be executed. Otherwise, it is not going to be executed. But finally, we have, finally is not like cache, and also it is not mandatory to write the finally block immediately after each try and cache blocks. Finally block is not mandatory to write after try cache. If it is required, we are going to be use it. If it is not required, we are not using it. But cache block is not like that. Wherever we are writing the try block, immediately we have to write the cache block. Wherever we are writing cache a try block, immediately after try, we need to write at least one cache block. Multiple cache blocks also we can able to write for one try block. Multiple cache blocks also we can able to write for one try. See, finally block, always it is going to be get executed. Finally block, always it is going to be get executed. The code what we have written in the try block is raising an exception, then only the cache block will execute. Otherwise, the cache block will not execute. But the content what we have in the finally block is going to be execute always, whether the try block will raise exception or not. Also, the finally block will execute. So in this particular case, divide by 0 exception occurs. 0 by division by 0 exception occurs. Finally, block will execute always because we are getting this statement in a sense. Now, in this particular case, the exception occurs. Even though it is facing an exception, or we are going to be get the finally block to be executed here. So 10 divided by 2. So here also, we are not getting an exception here. We are getting the result. It means when here the exception is not rising, the cache block is not going to be executed. If cache block is not going to be executed, then by default, finally statement is going to be get executed. Finally statement is going to be get executed by default. So we are going to get this. The rest of the concepts will continue in the next session.